What do you do when your own company starts treating strangers like they're easy targets? That question hit Joseph Parker like a brick when he overheard a couple from Minnesota complaining in a cafe across from one of his hotels. They just stayed at his Santa Fe location, one of 8 boutique hotels he'd bought 6 years ago from a retiring family friend. Their bill, way higher than what they'd seen online. When they brought it up to the front desk, they were told prices change depending on where you're from. Joseph didn't say anything. He just sipped his coffee and listened. He hadn't visited that location in over 2 years. No reason to. The numbers looked fine, reviews were average, and the district manager, Carla, never raised red flags. But hearing that, it didn't sit right. So 2 days later, Joseph packed a duffel bag, shaved off his signature beard, dyed his hair darker, and grabbed a pair of glasses he hadn't worn in a decade. He booked a room online under the name Michael Dorsey, a first-time guest. The disguise worked. He looked like an exhausted schoolteacher on spring break, not the man who owned the building. The hotel had about 20 rooms. Solid location, charming adobe exterior, but inside, things felt off the moment he stepped through the sliding doors. A young woman at the front desk looked up, gave him a tight smile, then glanced back at her phone. She didn't say a word. Joseph stood there. Checking in, he said, trying to sound casual. The girl didn't look up. Name, Michael Dorsey. She tapped her keyboard, still distracted. One night? Yes. $279. Joseph blinked. He'd seen the online rate, $179. He'd even taken a screenshot. Wait, I thought it was $179. She finally looked at him, eyebrows raised. Yeah, not for out-of-towners. That's local rate. Joseph tilted his head. But the website doesn't say that, she shrugged. Prices change. You want the room or not? He nodded slowly, pulling out a credit card. Sure, I'll take it. She didn't even ask for ID, just swiped the card and handed him a keycard. Room 203. Elevators busted, so stairs are on the left. Joseph took his key and climbed the stairs. The hallway smelled like bleach and old carpet. The room itself wasn't bad, clean enough, but the lamp by the bed flickered every time he touched it. He dropped his bag, pulled out his phone, and jotted down notes. Downstairs, he sat in the lounge area pretending to read a travel guide. He watched the desk clerk check in a man with a New Mexico license, same room type. She smiled, joked with him, and charged him $179 without hesitation. Next came a couple from Ohio. Same exact room. She barely greeted them and charged them $289. Joseph's chest tightened. Back in his room, he called the hotel's number. She picked up. Front desk. Hi, this is Michael Dorsey. Just wanted to ask, why does the rate change for people from out of town? A pause. It's just policy, sir. Is that written anywhere? Another pause. You'd have to talk to the manager. Can I do that? She's not in tonight. Joseph hung up. He didn't sleep much that night. He kept thinking about the older couple from the cafe. How many times had this happened? How many customers walked away thinking his hotel scammed them? Morning came. Joseph went downstairs early. A different worker was at the desk now, an older man with kind eyes and a tired smile. Good morning, sir, he said warmly. Hope you slept well. Not bad, Joseph replied. You the manager? No, just the morning guy. I'm Harold, been here 20 years. Joseph nodded. You like working here? Harold hesitated. I did. Used to be a good place. Lately, feels different, less heart. Guests used to leave happy. Now they mostly leave confused or annoyed. Joseph leaned in. You ever hear about the rates being different for people from out of town? Harold lowered his voice. That's Marissa's thing. She's the afternoon clerk. Started doing that about a year ago. Says it helps boost numbers. I told Carla about it, but she brushed it off. Joseph raised an eyebrow. Carla's the district manager? Yeah, she's here maybe once a month. Always says we're doing fine. But we're not. Joseph thanked Harold and left to grab breakfast from the diner next door. While sipping lukewarm coffee, he watched Marissa come in around 11. Bright red lipstick, phone in one hand, iced coffee in the other. She didn't say a word to Harold as he handed off the shift. Joseph returned to the lobby, pretending to be on his phone. He watched Marissa greet a family from Arizona. Cold and distant. The rate, over 300. Joseph had seen enough. He walked outside, pulled out his real wallet, and dialed a number he hadn't used in a while. "Carla, it's Joseph Parker. I need you at the Santa Fe property this afternoon. Don't tell anyone, just show up and bring copies of the rate policy." Carla stammered. "Oh. Yes, sir. Is something wrong?" He didn't answer. He just hung up. Joseph sat in the corner of the lobby, near the fake fireplace that hadn't worked in years. From the armchair, he could hear most of what was happening behind the front desk. Marissa barely acknowledged guests unless they asked her a direct question. When they did, her answers were clipped, sometimes even sarcastic. She didn't look up from her phone unless she had to process a card. He watched as a woman approached the desk with a stroller and 2 young children trailing behind. She looked flustered but polite. "Hi, I'm checking in. Name's Amanda Reyes." Marissa tapped the keyboard lazily, then glanced up. "Out of state?" "Yes, we're from Colorado," Amanda said, smiling cautiously. "Rooms 329. "Rates 324 plus tax," Marissa said flatly. The woman blinked. "I saw it online for 189. That's why we booked here." Marissa didn't hesitate. "Prices change." "You can take it or not." Amanda looked down at her kids, then back at Marissa. "Is there a manager I can talk to?" Marissa blew out a breath. "Not until Monday." Joseph stood. "Excuse me," he said, walking up calmly. "Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't help overhearing what's the reason the rate's so much higher just because she's from out of town." Marissa didn't look at him. "It's an adjusted rate. It's not illegal." "I didn't say it was illegal. I'm just wondering where it's written." Marissa turned her head slowly. "Do you work here?" "No," Joseph said, "but I'm curious. Because I paid more too, and I'm not sure how this is okay." She stared at him, and for a second her expression changed, not worried, annoyed. She muttered something under her breath and turned to Amanda. "You want the room or not?" Amanda hesitated, then reached for her wallet. Joseph stepped back and watched her check in. He made a quick note on his phone, then walked outside. Carla's white sedan was pulling into the parking lot. She stepped out wearing a blazer and dark sunglasses, holding a leather folder under one arm. "You want to tell me what's going on, or are we doing this inside?" she asked. "Inside," Joseph replied, holding the door open. They walked through the lobby. Joseph nodded toward the seating area to the left of the front desk. Carla sat stiffly while Joseph stood, arms crossed. "Have a look," he said, handing her his phone. "Listen to that guest interaction." He had recorded the exchange with Amanda quietly from the moment she approached the desk. Carla played the short clip. Her face didn't change much, but she tapped the screen to replay the final few seconds. "I'll talk to her," she said. Joseph shook his head. "No, I will." He walked directly to the desk. "Marissa?" She didn't turn, still tapping on her phone. "Marissa," he repeated, louder. She turned slowly. "What?" Joseph took off his glasses. Her eyes flicked up, then narrowed. My name is Joseph Parker. I own this property, and you're done here." She stared at him, stunned. "Wait, what?" "You've been manipulating rates based on where people are from, without disclosure, without justification, and without authorization. You've lied to guests. You've ignored complaints. You've turned this front desk into a toll booth." Marissa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Get your things. You're no longer employed here," she scoffed. "Seriously? You're firing me over a couple bucks." Joseph stepped closer. "I'm firing you because you treated people like they were nothing more than walking wallets. You used your position to squeeze them, and you didn't care what kind of experience they had as long as their card cleared." Marissa folded her arms. "Carla knew about the policy." Joseph turned to Carla. "Is that true?" Carla stood a little straighter. "I knew there were adjustments being made, but I didn't realize it was this aggressive. She told me it was a yield strategy." Joseph's voice was calm but firm. "You never looked at the transaction logs. Never wondered why this location had higher average daily rates than any other property in the region, despite lower occupancy?" Carla hesitated. "No," she admitted. "I assumed it was seasonal fluctuation." Joseph nodded. "Then we have a second problem." He turned back to Marissa. I need your badge and login credentials, now. She pulled off her name tag and tossed it on the counter. You're making a mistake. Good luck finding someone who will put up with this dump. She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. Joseph turned to Carla. We'll talk in the office. They stepped into the small back room behind the front desk. A dusty computer tower hummed in the corner, and a corkboard still had faded inspection sheets from last year pinned up. Joseph sat down and motioned for Carla to do the same. I need to understand something. When Harold reported concerns about rate changes, why didn't you investigate? I asked Marissa about it, Carla said. She told me they were promotional adjustments. I didn't see anything in the system that looked wrong. You didn't ask for receipts or compare rates by ZIP code. No, Joseph leaned forward. You've been here 5 years. You know how our pricing structure works. You know we never adjust rates based on geography alone. That's not yield management, that's profiling. Carla sat back silent. Effective immediately, you're suspended. I'll have corporate review every location under your supervision. If I find anything like this elsewhere, I won't just remove you, I'll make sure you don't touch hospitality again. I understand. Joseph left her there and returned to the front desk. Harold had come back in, holding a wrinkled folder. I heard the door slam, he said. She's gone, Harold nodded. Good, she made this place miserable. Joseph looked around the lobby. A couple of guests were waiting near the coffee station, glancing at the desk. We need coverage. You feel up to stepping in for a few hours, Harold smiled, then paused. Yeah. I can do that. Joseph watched as Harold walked behind the desk and greeted a new guest with a warmth that had been missing since the moment he arrived. By late afternoon, Joseph had reviewed 2 weeks of rate logs. The pattern was consistent. Out-of-state guests were routinely charged between $60 to $100 more per night, and there were no notes or codes to justify the difference. Worse, complaints had been flagged in the guest comment fields but never escalated. He found a stack of printed guest comment cards in the drawer beneath the desk. Half of them mentioned confusion about pricing. One card, written in careful cursive, read, "Felt like we were punished for not being locals. Never experienced that before. Sad because the building is beautiful." Joseph sat with that for a while. Then he picked up the phone and called a woman named Claire, his regional operations manager. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Claire, I need you to fly to Santa Fe tomorrow. Bring someone from compliance. We're going to audit every single front desk procedure across the board, and send someone to fill in for Marissa. Harold can't do this alone." "Got it," Claire said. Joseph hung up and looked around the lobby. A mother was reading to her daughter on the couch. A young couple was checking in, smiling as Harold handed them their key cards and circled their room on the map. For the first time since he arrived, the hotel felt like it belonged to guests again, not just the ledger. Joseph stepped outside, took a breath of the dry afternoon air, and pulled his phone from his pocket. He opened the company's internal app and clicked into the message board. He typed, "Effective immediately, any employee adjusting rates based on a guest's home location will be terminated. We stand for fairness, transparency, and dignity. If you need help understanding what that looks like, I'll show you myself." Joseph Parker, he hit send. Then he walked back inside. There was still more work to do. By the next morning, Joseph had already reshuffled the front desk schedule, brought in a temporary assistant manager from the Albuquerque property, and cleared out the back office. Carla's suspension left a hole in the oversight chain, but Claire was flying in that afternoon with someone from compliance, and Joseph planned to stay until the transition was stable. He didn't wear the disguise anymore. He stood in the lobby in jeans and a pressed button-up, greeting guests personally as they checked out. Most didn't recognize him, but a few employees were now piecing it together. Harold approached with a paper in hand. "Found this tucked behind the receipts in the drawer," he said. "Looks like a rate adjustment chart. Handwritten?" "Marissa's." Joseph took it. It was on hotel stationery with columns marked State Weekend Boost and Walk-in Buffer. Some states had dollar amounts next to them: California, Texas, Illinois, while others were left blank. The implication was clear. Guests from certain areas were targeted for surcharges. "You ever see anything like this before?" Joseph asked. Harold shook his head. "No, but it explains a lot." Joseph folded the paper and slid it into his jacket pocket. "This is going straight to legal. And we're going to make it very clear that price discrimination has no place here in writing, in training, and in every rate system we use." By 11, the new assistant manager, Rachel, had arrived. She was calm, decisive, and moved quickly to get her bearings. Joseph met her in the office and briefed her on everything. "You'll run point here for the next 2 weeks," he said. "Claire will audit the financials and booking logs. You only answer to her or me." "Understood," Rachel nodded. "What about the rest of the staff?" "You'll see for yourself." Joseph stepped aside and let her do a walkthrough. Meanwhile, he walked out to the parking lot where Claire's rental car was just pulling in. She exited with a carry-on and a small laptop case, followed by a shorter man in glasses, Tomas, from compliance. "We've got a lot to look through," Claire said without greeting. "I already pulled bank deposit patterns. Something's off." "How far back?" "About 7 months. Right around when the rates started spiking. I'll confirm it once we dig into the POS logs." "Good," Joseph said. "Let's start there." They moved into the back office. Tomas set up on the loan desk while Claire unpacked documents. The room was quiet except for the soft click of keyboard keys. Joseph stood with arms crossed, watching the screen over Tomas's shoulder. "Here," Tomas said after a few minutes. "See this pattern? Bookings tagged as walk-ins, that's where the charges are inflated, but the guest notes say they booked online. That's mislabeling. Done manually." "So they were essentially disguising origin-based charges as walk-in premiums?" Joseph asked. "Yes, consistently, and not just on weekends. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whenever Marissa was on shift." Claire looked up. "We'll need to contact every guest who may have been overcharged. Offer refunds and document everything. We'll also need to notify the State Hospitality Board." Joseph nodded. "Start drafting the report." He stepped outside for a moment. The air was warm with no wind, and the plaza across the street was starting to buzz with tourists. He crossed over to the cafe. Inside, he spotted the same barista from earlier in the week, this time wiping down a counter. "Still pouring the strongest coffee in Santa Fe?" Joseph asked. She gave him a quick smile. "Depends who's asking." "Joseph Parker. I own the hotel next door." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, yeah, I know it. You've been around all week." "I have. What's going on over there?" "We get people in here every morning talking about how weird the front desk experience was. I'm fixing it." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good, it needed it." Joseph returned to the hotel just before noon. Rachel was seated behind the front desk now, walking through a training checklist with a young man in a navy polo. Joseph hadn't seen him before. She looked up. "This is Miguel. He's been housekeeping part-time but wants to cross-train at the desk. He speaks fluent Spanish and already knows the system layout." Joseph extended a hand. "Glad to meet you." Miguel shook it, looking slightly nervous. "Thanks, I just want to help." "Guests always seem confused when they check in," Rachel said. "He's already pointed out a few things that don't match policy, like the way hold amounts were explained. They were being told deposits were non-refundable." Joseph frowned. "Who was saying that?" "Mostly Marissa. Maybe others picked it up from her." Joseph turned to Miguel. "Did you ever hear her say why?" Miguel hesitated. "She said it helped weed out the cheap ones, that if someone couldn't handle a big deposit, they'd probably complain about other stuff too." Joseph stood in silence for a moment, jaw tightening. "Thank you for telling me. You'll be paid for every hour of cross-training, and lunch is on us today." "I want you at this desk full-time if that's what you want too," Miguel nodded. "I'd like that." Just then, the phone rang. Rachel answered, listened, and looked up. "It's a guest from last week. Says he was charged different than what he booked online." Joseph took the phone. "This is Joseph Parker, I'm the owner." There was a pause on the line, then the man replied, steady but firm. "I'm not trying to cause a scene, I just want to know why I was charged $330 when the site said $200. You're not causing a scene. You're helping us fix something that should never have happened. We're issuing full refunds to impacted guests. I'll handle yours personally. May I have your email?" The man gave it, still sounding surprised. "Thanks, that's more than I expected." "No. It's the least we can do." Joseph hung up and turned to Rachel. "We're going to need a script for every front desk staffer to follow when these calls come in. No deflecting, no excuses." Rachel nodded. "I'll write one up." By late afternoon, Claire had compiled a list of over 100 guests who had likely been overcharged. Tomas Cross referenced the check in logs with IP address data from the booking portal surprisingly detailed and damning. In nearly every case, guests from out-of-state IPs were marked as walk-in. Claire looked up from her laptop. "You want to go public with this? I'll make a statement after the refunds are processed," Joseph said. "Right now, I want every guest made whole." Quietly, respectfully. "Understood." Joseph stood in the lobby as the sun began to dip. Miguel was helping a couple find dinner recommendations, speaking confidently and warmly. Rachel was reviewing a new keycard protocol with another desk staffer. Harold was off for the evening, finally able to leave without worry. Joseph watched the couple thank Miguel, then head out into the dusk. The hotel felt different. Not fully healed, but finally aligned with what it was meant to be, a place where people were welcomed, not profiled. Joseph stepped back behind the desk, opened a small drawer and pulled out a notepad. He scribbled one sentence at the top of the page. "Every guest leaves better than they arrived." He tore it off and taped it to the inside of the key drawer. Then he turned out the lobby lights one at a time and locked the front door behind him. It had been 5 days since Joseph revealed his identity. The Santa Fe property was no longer running on autopilot. Every policy, every employee role, every guest interaction was under review. A temporary team from the corporate office had filled in key gaps, but the hotel was still short-staffed. Joseph stayed on site, rotating between departments to understand what else had slipped through the cracks. At 6:45 a.m., he joined the housekeeping crew in the laundry room. The industrial dryer was rattling again, the one labeled Unit B. A woman named Rosa, who'd worked there for nearly 16 years, was pouring detergent into a worn dispenser. "It's been making that sound for 3 months, Rosa said, not looking up. "We submitted a maintenance request, but no one came." Joseph crouched next to the machine, watching the drum wobble with each spin. "And that was before or after Carla's last visit?" "Before and after. We stopped mentioning it." Joseph stood and pulled out his notebook. "From now on, maintenance requests come to me until we get a new regional lead." Rosa gave a short nod. "That's fine, but we need more than a dryer. We're down to 3 working vacuums for the entire hotel. One of them keeps shocking whoever uses it." Joseph looked across the room. The supply shelf had a few cracked bins and an empty box labeled gloves. It was clear no one had invested in this space for a long time. "I'll have replacements delivered from Albuquerque by tomorrow," he said, "and I want your full supply list by noon." "No rounding down." Rosa finally looked at him, eyes tired but measuring. "You're actually going to fix this?" "I'm not interested in appearances. I want a hotel that works for everyone." She nodded once and returned to her folding. Later that morning, Joseph walked the perimeter with Rachel. They stopped by the back exit where 2 large garbage bins stood half full, flanked by broken pallets. "This gate doesn't lock," Rachel said, tugging at the rusted latch. "We've had non-guests cut through here at night. One of the room attendants got startled last week." Joseph jotted it down. "We'll get a contractor out here. If it's not secure by Friday, I'll board it myself." They moved back inside, weaving past carts and breakfast trays not yet cleared. At the front desk, Miguel was helping a couple with directions to a museum. His delivery was calm, confident, and he even offered to print them a walking map, Rachel waited until they left, then turned to Joseph. That kid's got presence. I think he could handle the evening shift solo in a week. Let's give him the shot. Promote from within wherever we can, Rachel nodded. We've got one issue left for today. Edith. Joseph remembered the name. She was the weekend desk clerk, older, quiet, barely spoke during staff meetings. Her file showed she'd been there over a decade, but there was no note of any training updates or performance reviews in the past 4 years. What's the concern? He asked. Rachel gestured toward the small break room. She's been refusing to follow the adjusted check-in script. Still quoting rates verbally instead of showing printed confirmations, and she called a guest difficult last night for asking about the hold policy. Joseph exhaled. Let's talk to her. They found Edith sitting at the break room table, sipping from a thermos. She looked up as they entered, eyes flicking between the two of them. Edith, Joseph said. Can we speak privately for a minute? She rose slowly, setting the thermos down. They stepped into the adjacent office. I heard there were some issues with your shift last night, Joseph began, keeping his tone even. I did my job, Edith said quickly. The guest was impatient. I was trying to explain the policy, but she kept interrupting. Were you using the new script? I've been doing this longer than anyone here. I know how to explain a hold. Joseph sat across from her. The script isn't about experience, it's about clarity. We had guests misled by inconsistent explanations. That's what started this entire review. Edith crossed her arms. I don't need a script to talk to people. Rachel spoke gently. But the guests need consistency. That's not negotiable. Edith's jaw tightened. So what, you're going to fire me for not sounding like a robot? No, Joseph said. Not for that. But we need people who are willing to adapt when the system changes, especially when those changes are about fairness. Edith didn't respond. Would you be open to shadowing Miguel on his shift? He's been using the new protocols without issue, Joseph offered. Her expression hardened. You want me to learn from a kid who's been here 2 weeks? Joseph stood. I want guests to be treated the same way, no matter who's behind the desk. If that's not something you're willing to do, then I can't keep you on staff. Edith stood too, slower. I've given this place 12 years. And I respect that, but we're rebuilding a culture, one where tenure doesn't excuse resistance to progress. Edith looked at Rachel, then back at Joseph. I'll think about it. You've got until the end of the day. She left without another word. By mid-afternoon, the new training materials were laminated and posted behind the desk. Miguel and another desk attendant, Leela, ran through the updated check-in process several times, even role-playing scenarios with out-of-state guests. Joseph observed from a distance, noting how natural it was starting to feel. Claire returned from a meeting with legal, holding a folder. The refund process is approved. We'll send out apology letters with checks or credits depending on the guest's preference. Good, Joseph said. Let's get them in the mail by Monday. She paused, then added, also I spoke to the state board. They're not pursuing penalties, said our response was proactive and thorough, but they'll be watching. We deserve to be watched, Joseph said. We let it happen. As the evening settled, Joseph walked the halls alone. Housekeeping carts were stored properly. The flickering lamp in room 203 had been replaced. The hallway smelled faintly of citrus instead of bleach. He stopped outside the courtyard and looked across the adobe walls, now lit by soft amber floodlights. A couple sat by the fountain, laughing quietly. No tension, no confusion. Back inside, Miguel was finishing his shift. Rachel handed him a printed schedule. You're on evenings next week. Solo, you up for that? Miguel looked at Joseph. I think so. You don't need to think, Joseph said. You earned it. As Joseph turned to leave, he passed the break room. Edith's thermos was gone, so was her nameplate from the locker. A folded note sat on the table. Couldn't do it your way, hope it works out. He folded it and slid it into his pocket without a word. The next morning, Joseph packed his bag. He didn't shave, didn't dye his hair back. Just checked out the way any guest would quietly through the front desk. Rachel was already behind the counter. You heading back to HQ? For now, but I'll be back. She handed him a folded sheet. Miguel wrote this, asked me to give it to you. Joseph opened it in the car. It was a printed guest map, the same one he'd seen Miguel hand out earlier, only this one had something scribbled across the top in blue ink. Thanks for seeing what we see. Joseph folded it once, then started the engine. The company would make changes not just in Santa Fe, but everywhere. But the biggest change had already begun. The culture was shifting from silence to accountability, from hiding problems to facing them. He didn't need disguises anymore. He just needed to keep showing up, every guest, every employee, every shift, the way it should have been all along.